Hi, this is Kerry Critchlow from RCI Recording Studios. Today we're going to continue our look at our production breakdown of I'm Falling Down. We're going to cover the bass, the guitars, and the synths today. I hope you enjoyed the drum breakdown that we did last week. We're going to continue more in that vein today and continue on through letting you kind of in behind the scenes of potential ways to go about producing your own music. Again, just as a preface, whether or not this is your style of music is not really the point. The point is more the mindset or the concepts of how you could go about doing this with your own music, and hopefully you can come away with some ideas about how to incorporate these elements or concepts or ideas into your own productions. Anyways, we're going to get started here, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to do my best to answer them, and if you want me to cover any other topics going forward, please let me know. I will do my best to present the information that you guys are interested in. So with that, let's jump back into it.
We're going to move on to the bass next, so we're going to just go ahead and mute up all these drums here for now. Give me just a moment here. And then we're going to dig into the bass here in just a second. So we'll unmute the drums, and then we're going to bring in our bass. So there are two basses happening here in the song. One I've called bass distortion and one I've just called bass. So here's the bass distortion, and I think this is more of a synthy, dirty, kind of distorty sounding bass. And then I think this bass here is just kind of like a regular, everyday electric bass, like a regular bass guitar kind of sound. Yeah. And then I layered them together. And I'm relatively certain that they're pretty much doing the exact same thing everywhere except the bridge. I think the bridge is the only time it changes what it's doing. Another thing to be aware of, I guess, is because I have these basses layered with each other, they're not always playing every time throughout the entire song together. There are times where I take the distorted bass out, primarily during the verses and the bridge section here. And then that allows the choruses to hit a little harder with this distorted bass sound. I brought it in for this first verse just because I wanted it to really hit and be impactful when it came in, but it comes out during the verses. So if we were to play, we got our drum bus. So this is all the drums together happening that we just went over, and then we got our bass happening here. So. And the bass comes in, I don't know, maybe 2/3 into this first verse. It's kind of arbitrary to a large degree. I just didn't want everything to be kind of popping and happening all the time at the same time the whole way through the song. So I'm using the bass again to add some dynamics, and so it comes in kind of somewhere in this same verse, about the same time that this hi-hat loop here thing, the borrowed loop, I guess I'll say, comes in. All right. And so when that second verse comes in, we drop the distorted bass and we're just going with this low bass. And again, the low bass, I think, is playing, I think it's doing a G, B, C. Hold on one second. Okay. Sorry, just had to figure it out on guitar. So it's actually doing a C, B, E. And again, I think those are happening the whole way through the song up until the bridge where it changes a little bit. But it's a pretty simple song. It's just doing C, B, E. All right. And if you're curious for the technical aspect, it's doing a C for half of a measure. So it's a half note. Then it switches to a B for a half note, and then the E is a whole note. So that progression is 2 bars long. And it's very simple. Again, you don't always have to come up with the most intricate bass lines in the world. In this case, the bass is just kind of doing the tonic of the chords, and it's just kind of doing the same thing the whole way through the song. You can make it more complex if you want. You can have it move a little bit more, but for the vibe I was going for, I just wanted like held out, low, gritty sounds going on for it, and it just kind of kept the same progression throughout. And so, aside from this distorted bass coming in and going out as the song goes, the bass is kind of just doing the same thing. We are creating a little bit of differences, again, by pulling out the distorted bass at spots. But by and large, the bass is kind of just doing its own thing, or doing the same thing over and over, except here in the bridge. And we'll play the bridge section for you just so you can get an idea. And those are whole notes. If you give me just a second, I can maybe tell you what's happening there. Okay, so it sounds like what's happening is a G, C, E minor, D, so the bridge section is changing up, but that is I just said it. I've already forgotten. I think it's a G, C, E minor, D, but I might have that backwards. But anyways, you get the idea. So the bass really isn't doing a whole lot of things different as the song goes, except for in the bridge section. It's mostly there just to hold down the low end and give some energy to the song and give some meat, some grit, the low end information, if you will. Yeah, so like the main changes that are happening with the bass are really just pulling out the distorted bass in the verse and bridge sections, and then having the chord pattern change in the bridge, and then the chord pattern goes into the chorus section, which is the same as the verse. That C B E. All right. So you get kind of an idea of what the bass is doing. Again, nothing too crazy, nothing too earth-shattering. It's actually pretty basic. It's just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again. Again, the big thing is just, creating a little bit of differences between the verses and the choruses by pulling in and out of this story one, and then a little bit of chord change in the bridge section. Otherwise, this whole song really is just doing that C, B, E, and I think that's a C major. Is it minor? Hold on. Okay, I could be wrong again about this, but I believe that the whole song, except for the bridge, is basically just doing a C major, B major, E minor. So again, very simple. Like you don't necessarily have to come up with the craziest, most complex chord progressions in the world in order to make something that's will sound good, or at least I think this sounds pretty good. You may not like it, and that's fine. Again, this is not necessarily just to judge whether or not you're judge whether or not this is a good song. It's just to give you some ideas and concepts about how you would go about doing applying some of these ideas and concepts into your own production. Just subtle things like maybe layering basses and making one come in and out during various sections in order to add some dynamics, add some interest, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that this helps with that kind of concept. We'll touch on the synths real quick. So the synths are kind of a series of pads and like keyboardy things, and it's just a few elements here going on with them. A lot of the synth stuff I have going on here is adding more kind of atmospheric stuff, although this arpeggio, I call it ARP for short, but this is kind of like the main instrument, I guess, throughout the song for the most part, except for maybe the choruses. You can call the guitars a little bit more important there, but this is what the arpeggio is doing. And I think it's just doing that pretty much the entire song when it's happening. There's sometimes I pull it out. Again, it's just to keep the song interesting and engaging as it goes. You don't want the song to get too stale by having things always happening all the time. But there's sometimes I think I pull it out here halfway through for a little bit of the first verse, and then the bridge, it's not happening. But by and large, this is kind of like, I think after the drums, this is the second thing I came up with, and so it tends to be like kind of the main gimmick of the song, if you will, or at least from my perspective, it was. And then the other things we have here, synthy stuff, is kind of pads, and these are more in an atmospheric context, so they're just sort of adding some vibe, some depth to the song, but they're not supposed to be like a main pop out and grab your attention sort of thing. They're just sort of adding vibe to the song, an atmosphere, if you will. All right, and so that's kind of just doing what the bass is doing, really. It's just a different sound. So like this pad 1 or whatever is essentially just doing exactly what the bass is doing. It's just it's the same notes as what the bass is doing. It's just a different sound, and that's just to add a little bit of, again, some atmosphere, some vibe to the song. In this case, I was going for a little more don't know if creepy is the right word, but a little bit more gritty, a little bit more disturbing, industrial. I don't know. Then we've got pad 2, which I think also is doing a similar thing to the bass. Yeah. And so the pads are, I think, all doing the same thing, that C, B, E. The same thing as the bass, just maybe in different octaves, different sounds, but they're just creating atmosphere. And then we have a third pad here. Again, same thing as the bass. So very simple. This is not, genius level stuff here. This is very simple, basic stuff. The pads are just creating an atmosphere, a bed for the rest of the song to kind of sit on, and creating a vibe, an atmosphere, I'm doing a really poor job of explaining this, but it's there to just create sort of a vibe and atmosphere. I really can't think of better words than that. But when we play these 3 pads together, our synth stuff, they're just doing the same thing as the bass, that CBE, very simple, very basic, nothing crazy going on here. Just kind of setting the stage for the song, if you will. All right. And then when we bring in our art all together, so we've got our all of our synths playing here, along with our drums and our bass. All right. And I don't want to bore you with playing through this song a whole bunch of times. I'm sure you're already getting sick of this song. But one thing I do want to draw your attention to is that when we hit this second verse, and ultimately I will play this second verse in its entirety. I realize we haven't done that yet, but we're pulling out the ARP and we're pulling out one of the pads and we're simplifying this verse. We're quieting it down. We're making it a little bit more chill, especially coming out of this chorus, and with the guitars it's even more noticeable. But we're also adding in a kick here, which we didn't have in the first verse. So like the main chord progression of this song, that C major, B major, E minor, or whatever it is, that's happening throughout the entire song except for the bridge. And so I had to think of ways that I can keep the song interesting, even because with a repeating chord progression that never changes, you have to be a little bit more creative about how you go about doing that. And so some of the ways I've done that are adding in elements or taking away elements as the song goes in order to keep it feeling like it's changing or bringing in new things. And so you don't always have to do it the way I've done it, but because I'm using the same chord progression throughout the entire song, I just had to think of various ways. And so when the second verse comes around, I'm pulling out this distorted bass. I'm pulling out some of this. I'm pulling out the arpeggio. I'm pulling out the one of the pads. I'm adding in a kick that wasn't there in the first verse. So like, even though the first verse and the second verse are playing the same notes, essentially, the same chord progressions, they sound a little bit different from each other. And so that's just one way to do it. There are other ways. You could actually change the chord progression between the verses and chorus and things like that to create difference and interest and things like that. But this is the way I went about it due to the nature of this song and how it was going. And so, yeah. And then there's other spots where, you know, the arpeggio comes back in and goes out and all that kind of fun stuff. And the pads are kind of there more or less throughout the whole song. They're just kind of creating a vibe for the rest of the song to sit on. There are other things that I'm doing in order to create interest as the song goes. You know, by bringing in different instrumentation, the drums, like things like this. And the last thing we're going to look at today, and I may go through the vocals in another video, but for today, I'm mostly just focused on the instrumentation portion of this. Although there's a lot to be said about how to produce vocals, and just as a foretaste, from here to here, those are all vocal tracks. That's all stuff that somebody sang. Each one of these was sung. Just to give you some context, not every song is going to have 80 to is going to have 40 plus vocals, vocal tracks in it. But this song did, and so it may be interesting in the future to go over that, but we're not going to do that today. I just wanted to give you kind of an idea that you can get pretty, you can have some fun with your vocal productions. So anyways, we're going to get into the guitars. Now, there's not too much happening with the guitars for the most part. So we've got the distorted guitars happening. So we got, and I layer my guitars, and you can see that we've layered them a couple of times here. All right. And so these are just whole notes for the most part. All right, and they're both playing the same thing. I think even like the same amp sounds, tones, whatever, same sounds, everything. And so I've taken the guitar, and they're basically doing the same thing. And then I think I've done the same thing here with these guitars as well. So playing the exact same thing as these guitars here. And these might actually be different tones. Yeah. All right. So and actually now I'm thinking about it, all these guitars might be different tones, but I have 4 guitars playing basically the same thing. I'm panning them hard left and hard right, hard left, hard right. All right, pretty simple. And so they're playing the same thing. I'm just layering them. And then I think I've put in these octaves, which are, again, doubling. So both of these tracks are playing the same thing. And I played each of these individually. These are not copy pasted, and there's a reason for that. We may go into this in more detail later, but the short way to put it is if you copy paste these two, if I were to copy, for instance, if I was not to have played these individually, take 1, take 2, and I was just to copy paste this to here. All I'm really doing is doubling the volume of this. What creates that doubled effect is the minor differences between the two takes of the song. And so when you are recording guitar and you want to thicken them up, you want that big kind of doubled, big, wide sound, your best bet is to play through the song each take, as opposed to copying and pasting. Copying and pasting is really just going to double the volume of your sound, and it won't create that nice stereo kind of wide sound that you typically might want to get when you're doing this sort of thing. And so I would recommend playing each track out. All right, and I think these are just doing like octaves. These are kind of power chordy kind of things. I think I might have added in like the fifth and the root on these guitars here. But when you play all the guitars together here, then this is just the chorus guitars, you get this. All right, and then when we put everything back in together, we get this. All right, and so mostly just whole notes, and then a little bit of syncopation-y kind of stuff. So it's like boom, 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 ba-da-ba-boom, ba-boom, kind of a thing. And so power chords, again, very simple. I'm not doing anything crazy with these guitars. It's very simple, very easy. Like most beginner guitar players could play something like this pretty quickly, pretty simply. And then we layer this, and these are kind of octavey sounds. It's hard to explain without a visual aid, but essentially I'm playing the same notes as what's going on in this power chord, but an octave up. And then I'm adding a little bit of rhythm to the octave guitars. And so that's chorus guitars. And that I think I did copy and paste chorus to chorus. So nothing crazy there. And then the last choruses that we'll go over here are what I did in the bridge. And they're not playing through the whole bridge. I think I brought them in the second half of this bridge. And so I think these are both doing the same thing. Again, played each one individually instead of copy and pasting. I played each of these parts out, left and right, and then I added a... Oh no, this is the second verse. I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong spot. I'm in the second verse. So this comes in and halfway through the second verse. All right, and it's doing that same pattern the whole time throughout. And then I believe that this is a harmony of that. Nope, not specifically a harmony. It's kind of a different part altogether. All right. And then I'll play that in context with the rest of the song. than have the synths going on. Actually, I'm going to play the second verse for you just so you can get kind of an idea of what's happening throughout. But the first half of the second verse is very sparse. Like, again, I'm trying to create differences between the verses. So, and then the second half of the verse, the drums come in with these guitars. And we're back into a chorus. So you kind of hear what these guitars are doing. And along with the ARP here. And so this bottom guitar is kind of doing a very similar thing to what the arpeggio is doing. Yeah, and so again, very simple, nothing crazy going on with the guitars here. Just some palm muted, kind of repeating patterns over and over and over again. And I just added them in to make it so that when the acoustic drums came in, it felt a little bit more cohesive. So like, for instance, if we took these guitars out during this section where these drums, the acoustic drums come in, all right, so just add a little bit of coherence, I guess. And also, again, we're just trying to find ways to create interest as the song goes, right? So it's very sparse here. Then we bring in the newer drums. We add this guitar part. We're adding it back in the ARP. So we go from like a simplified version of the verse to a little bit more of a complex version of the verse as it goes, right? Just ways to add interest as our song is being played out. And we're doing it in a lot of different subtle ways. Where like the drums are doing something a little bit different. The bass is doing something a little bit different. The guitar is doing a little something different. Just a few different things, all in the service of trying to add interest as the song goes. And then the last section that really differs is the bridge. And the bridge is the only place in the entire song where the actual chords are changing. And we have created a couple of guitar tracks as well for the bridge specifically. One is doing this reverse guitar thing. I don't remember what was initially played, but I took what I initially played and I reversed it so that it's basically being played backwards. All right. And then we've got this other guitar here. Pretty simple. None of these parts are overly complicated. Again, this is a lot of what's going on in the song is actually maybe even deceptively simple. I'm not doing a whole lot of things that require heaps and heaps of talent or creativity to play or whatever. Like a lot of this stuff is very simple, repetitive things, which is why I try to break up a lot of that repetition by adding things as the song goes in order to give it layers, in order to keep it engaging as it goes so that it's not super boring. I mean, the entire song, for the most part, except for this bridge section, the entire song is 3 chords. And this bridge section is 4 chords, and like 2 of them are the same chords as over here. So you don't have to have a master doctorate or whatever in music theory in order to create these things. You can take very simple things, and through the use of adding layers, taking away layers, playing with dynamics, just using a slight bit of creativity, you can take very simple things and put them together in a way that feels more complex than it actually is. And so here's the bridge. All right. And then you kind of heard halfway through that bridge, that hi-hatty bit coming in. Again, just, it starts off simple, add a little bit, just kind of evolving and growing as it goes until it kind of fizzles out and then goes into this soft chorusy section. And so you start to get an idea of how you can apply some of these concepts to your own productions that you're working on. And you can do that using MIDI instruments. You can do that using live instruments. I've done a combination here. I played these guitars. They're the only real, quote unquote, real instrument in this song outside of the vocals. Everything else was I played on a MIDI keyboard and used sound libraries to get the sounds I was looking for. So I have no idea how long this recording is going to be going. I'm going to play through the entire song. Hopefully this is not going to bore you too much, but I'm going to play through the whole song. And I want you to kind of, as I'm playing through this, listen for some of these things that we've gone over, how the drums are changing, how the songs are changing, how things are dropping out or coming in, and think how you can apply some of these techniques to some of your own productions. And there's a lot of other ways that you can go about doing this sort of thing. The way I've done this song is not the end all be all, and maybe some of the techniques will only apply to what I've done. A lot of what I've done, like the thought process involved, is universal to any kind of genre that you want to apply it to. Some of the specifics might be for this song, like bringing in distorted guitars to beef up the chorus. Maybe you can only use that in rock songs, but there are other things that you can do to make your choruses kick other than adding in like distorted guitars or whatever. There are other ways to build up a song other than just using risers and impacts, but these are all tools and concepts and ideas that you can use to keep your productions fresh and interesting as they go. Just thinking of subtle ways to keep your verses a little bit different from each other, so that they don't sound like they're copy-pasted. Ways to make the song evolve and grow as it goes, meaning I don't start this song off with everything coming in all at once. There's kind of a slow build to it. Other times you do want to start everything off big and impactful and heavy, and then after that you kind of you can bring down the energy in in various sections. So while this may not be the only way to go about this, producing a song or whatever, the concepts, techniques, and the thinking behind it is what you can kind of use in order to make your own productions come to life. And these are the small little details of the songs, right? The individual parts. So if we look at this outline, the song is pretty basic. It's got a verse, a chorus, a second verse, a chorus, a bridge, a soft chorus, and then a big chorus. That's our song structure. Very basic, very simple. The chord structure is just 3 chords, pretty much the entire song, except for the bridge where it changes up for a few bars, and then it goes right back to that same chord progression. The instrumentation, we got these electronic-y drums, we got the acoustic drums, we've got guitars, we've got a synth bass, and then a more electric guitar, electric bass, guitar bass, whatever you want to call it, bass guitar. We got a few pads, and then an arpeggio kind of thing. So there's not a lot of complexity going on within this song, even though it seems like there is. It's just a lot of little things that kind of add up. So anyways, I'm going to play this song through one more time, beginning to end. And just as we're going through this, kind of listen for what's happening, how the song is changing and evolving over time, and how some of these details are kind of coming through in the production as it goes. So anyways, here we go. All right. So, anyways, I hope this has all been helpful. Hope that listening through and going through sort of this production breakdown has given you some ideas, some concepts on how you can go about creating your own productions and how to use some of these concepts and ideas in order to apply to your own music and how you're making it. We may go over the vocals again in the future at some point, but that's not what this video today was about. It was more about going through the detailing phase and how you can take something like, this drum loop that I was playing you over here earlier, and making that into this song. Basically, it's like that. This whole song started with this drum loop, and then we added in this arpeggio kind of thing, this thing that was happening. That's what this whole song started off as, and so it went through a lot of changes and tweaks. There were things that I did throughout the song in order to create variety and interest and things. And like, as I said, this song may not be your cup of tea, and that's fine. I'm not asking you to love this song. I'm just asking you to think about some of the ideas and concepts and the thinking about behind how the song was made in order to apply it to your own productions, your own music. Anyways, I hope this has been helpful. We'll get into more of this kind of stuff in the future, but we also need to cover other concepts as well. We'll probably get into things like signal flow, minor keys, and things like that as well. I'm going to go into detail and explain some of the concepts behind how to create some of these layers and things like that. Get into some sound design. There's a lot of things that we have yet to cover, and we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to music production. And so I hope you're going to you stick with me and continue on this journey with me as we all learn how to get better at what we're all doing here. So anyways, I hope you have a great day. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.